Welcome to Practical Privacy. And today we're going to discuss compliance training. And we have Jared Browne, a group head of AI governance and privacy with Fexco. How are you, Jared?
Hey, thanks. Yeah, very glad to be here, Orla.
Great to have you here. Thanks for joining. So maybe give us a little bit more context around the problem you were facing at the time.
So I suppose what we're going to try to talk about the problem is, right, how to make compliance or governance training engaging. And I guess it's not
Yeah.
just a data protection problem, right? You might work in any field of compliance and have the same problem. And I guess the problem in a nutshell is that you have to train people who find your subject matter very boring and
Mhm.
and maybe they don't naturally think that it is actually even relevant to them. So you might be responsible for privacy or data protection across a large company, and that means maybe training salesmen, insurance people, everything. And in their day to day, they probably just think, "What on earth has this got to do with my problems?" So really, your uphill struggle is you're going into a room to teach people about something that they don't want to learn about. So you start at a disadvantage, in other words, is what the problem is. So what you're trying to do is make up that ground and then even go into a positive zone where they actually enjoyed it. So
Which
that's the
sounds like fun.
challenge. Yeah, yeah.
Talk us through some of the things that you did try, let's say, that didn't work.
So what didn't work is the traditional approach to teaching in a business context. So I suppose I've been presenting in one shape or another for about 15 years, and you start out with less confidence in yourself and more reliance on Microsoft PowerPoint. So really like the who gives the presentation is Microsoft PowerPoint at the start because you're not, it's all text, it's all words, it's too many slides, and there's not enough about you, and it turns into a form of kind of logical procedural rote learning, and you're gradually losing the audience more and more as the session goes on. Whereas really you should actually be gaining the audience more and more as it goes on. They should be getting more and more interested. So it was too sterile, it's too logical, too much jargon, and for example, in our world of GDPR, too many references to different clauses of the GDPR. So we're going to talk about clause 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and you're losing them all the time because it's not how learning works, right? So and obviously we'll go on to talk about how learning does work, but that was the mistake I made, which I suppose is the mistake everyone makes at the beginning of the journey of teaching.
100%. And especially, I think in the business world, you assume, like, if you're teaching children, you understand you have to get them engaged. But for some reason, we assume that when we're working with adults, they're just going to understand the benefit of this and they're going to pay attention. But they're human at the end of the day. They need to
Um,
feel engaged.
and
That's
they're
the
children as well at the end of the day. When it comes to learning, they're not different to children. Because what I find is once
100%.
they sit down in the seat, they're basically saying, entertain me. That's what they're saying,
Yeah,
one way or
100%. I
another.
think remember that's what we need to remember.
Yeah.
Exactly. So let talk us through then what did actually work in the end.
So what works really is if you let go of all of the well, not all of your inhibitions, but let go of most of them around that it has to be formal, that it has to follow a set structure, that it has to be dry, boring, that it has to be full of legal jargon. You let go of all of that.
Mhm.
So there's a couple of things that work very well. So you're trying to basically devise it in such a way that because of the way it was presented, they remembered the content. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. So humor is very good, right? So basically, if they're laughing, they're learning. And you're kind of like, this is going to sound very glamorous, but you're kind of like a ninja, although you're not at all really, are you? In that it's learning by stealth, right? So they're
Yeah.
learning without even realizing it. So you're teaching them about GDPR clauses, the AI Act, in the middle of humor, engaging stories, interesting visuals, and they learn by accident. They go away knowing about the AI Act or the GDPR. So, for example, and the bit I would say that is most important of all is that I understood that a presentation is a story, it's a narrative, it's a book, right? And you might say like that. Basically, even the driest material. has a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a book. So frame it to them as a story or a narrative. And so some of the things I've done, and this is in my kind of breaking out of my inhibitions phase, I've often framed AI Act training as a murder mystery. So I started off with who killed AI, and then I'd say to the audience, "You're Sherlock Holmes," and then I put clues into the presentation about who the murderer is, and then at the end I say to them, "Okay, who spotted who the murderer is, and can you figure out who the murderer is?" Right? And it's total simplistic fun, but it engages them throughout. And the other one I did recently was I did AI literacy training for the Fexco group, and I framed it as a B movie version of The Lord of the Rings called Overlords of the Rings. And what I did was I hid little rings throughout the presentation, and they had to find all the rings. And if they didn't find all the rings, the world was going to end and AI would kill everyone, right? So they're totally silly, but it is. And then I had people in the chat saying they had spotted a ring and stuff like that. So they're actually paying attention to the content. Um, so the story, anyway, is the most important bit of all. Turn it into some kind of a narrative like that, and be playful with it. And these are just, as they say, mnemonic devices, ways of getting information to stick in someone's brain.
No, no, 100%.
And
And I
the,
suppose you think back, like,
the last thing I would say is that you're the star of the show, right? It's not Microsoft PowerPoint. They come to listen to you, and if you're not interesting, why would you think PowerPoint will be interesting? It's all about you. Humans learn from
100%.
humans, so
100%. But even down to your voice, the tone of your voice, the intonation, etc. If it's not engaging, you're putting people to sleep.
you are, yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah, yeah. You have to have some change of pitch or undulation, whatever it is, yeah. You're not in the business of putting people to sleep.
Excellent. No, that's brilliant. I love the analogies, actually, the different the storylines you used. It sounds cool.
Mhm.
Um, so hindsight, if you could go back and start again, let's say, what would you do different from the beginning?
I would have just changed the style much earlier
Mm,
because it's clear to me now that it wasn't working, but I suppose the natural reality is it takes you time to gain the confidence and to learn and to move on. I did one training session, it's actually about 13 years ago, about how to present, and the trainer was excellent, and she actually got us to do an exercise which was do a whole presentation without a single word, like not a single word, just images, and just talk through it. And it was very powerful because it showed quite clearly actually you could actually explain a whole topic without a single word. Obviously you're going to
mm.
talk it through, right? But
Yeah, for a minute there.
yeah, yeah, it
Yeah,
wouldn't be sign language or mime, but you will talk, but the screen is just going to be nothing but nice images. Because there's a superficiality to all of us, which is that our eyes like to look at nice images and nice colors. It's why telly and the cinema is so addictive. Um,
exactly.
so you give them those things, and it helps the learning process. So that's all I'd say. I would have changed earlier, but the reality is it
Yeah.
takes time to get the confidence.
Okay. And then one final piece of advice, whether in relation to this topic or completely separate. One piece of advice you wish you'd been offered earlier or you think would be valuable to share with your peers.
I think it's just don't afraid to be unorthodox when you're training because it's what people want. They've attended 1,000 sessions that are all the same. So if you give them something different, they will thank you for it.
Excellent piece of advice. Thank you very much, Jared. I really appreciate your insights. And yeah, I'd love to attend one of your training sessions one day.
I
They sound
can
like great
guarantee you
fun.
entertainment anyway, if nothing else. Yeah.
So thank you all for joining. If you enjoyed, remember to subscribe and share. Until next time.